The sacking of Caroma workers at Norwood yesterday, as manufacturers hightail it to China, serves up yet another problem that few have highlighted. Yes, the unemployment for 75 families is devastating. But what quality of workmanship comes out of China? On the same day, the ABC 7:30 report ran a major story on Australia's customs intercepting dangerous contraband flooding Australia from China. This included counterfeit medicines which contained impurities that can cause death. It showed pictures of a Sydney warehouse stacked to the ceiling with seized goods, waiting to be used as evidence in court. Now here is an excerpt from last night's 7:30 report. It highlights how dangerous Chinese imports can be. One of the speakers you'll hear is the Customs New South Wales Commander, Tim Fitzgerald.
There's a whole new range of frightening fakes like mobile phone and computer batteries that have the potential to do serious harm.
Acids sometimes coming out of the batteries themselves, the ones that you charge through your power points on the walls, starting fires, those sorts of things. So we're definitely concerned about the safety issues associated with these counterfeit items.
The gangs have also moved into toothbrushes, deodorant and soap, worrying authorities that the scammers will literally target anything.
It's particularly dangerous at the moment. With the personal goods, these are items that people are sometimes putting into their mouth. Toothbrushes that contain lead paint that can come away from the toothbrush while someone's brushing their teeth. It's an air filter, yeah.
It even has implications for road safety. This fake Toyota oil and air filter is just one of thousands imported into Australia.
A counterfeit oil filter. It's been tested and shown that it won't actually filter the oil, which obviously can have catastrophic results for an engine.
So David, you've got some counterfeit medicines there. How good's the quality?
So the quality varies from absolutely poor and pathetic to really very accurate copies.
David Grohlman from pharmaceutical giant Pfizer is also fighting counterfeit medicines, the most popular being Viagra.
Medication, that's the counterfeit one, and this is the real one. It would be very, very difficult to tell the difference. As you can see, the tablets are quite a lot larger.
These tablets were seized in the mail and sent to the lab for testing.
We found historically paint, other toxins, heavy metals, chalk, rat poison, other liquids like antifreeze, so anything, ink, which would allow it to dissolve or mix.
Now, that's contraband, that's stuff that has been caught. But I want to remind you of the following, and all of these are legal. Counterfeit honey that had no honey content in it came into Australia, got repackaged and sent to America, right? Azo dye clothes, known to be carcinogenic. Southeast Asian prawns containing antibiotics. Faulty electrical computer cords catching fire as people attempt to charge appliances. Now, do you see where I'm going with this? It's one thing to allow such imports from China and elsewhere. It is a totally different matter to deliberately relocate manufacturing and food production simply because it's cheaper. Safety and quality is not up to scratch in many instances of any imported goods from China. Australian consumers will pay more for quality products rather than buy a Chinese hammer and nails where the nails don't bend but the hammer does. Who the hell are we kidding? Australia's labelling laws could make it very hard to know what you're buying. We need to fix that. The half-baked Irish bread tells a very powerful story. It's totally unacceptable to allow imports of shoddy goods and suspect food where it can compete unfairly with better quality goods, putting financial pressure on those companies who offer better and safer standards. It is really time we got real. Let's talk with Senator John Madigan about this. John, this is an amazing story and one that every Australian ought to know about.
Yeah, Leon, this has been going on for years under successive governments of all persuasions, Leon. And, they say, trust us, we're looking into it, blah, blah, blah. Now, the fact of the matter is that we have a social, economic and an environmental tsunami of disaster for people, for communities. Now, this whole thing of this inferior non-compliant product flooding into Australia is costing jobs, it's devastating communities, it makes people poor, it doesn't contribute to our country through the tax system, through skills. The list just goes on and on and on. And, you know, you drive around the northern suburbs of Adelaide, or, you know, you come over to Melbourne, and there's just warehouse after warehouse going up, bringing this bloody rubbish into our country and devastating our country and its people.
Well, look, why? I mean, there is supposed to be an Australian standard. Now, we recently had a situation where the ACCC ordered a recall of clothes with azo dyes found to be carcinogenic. How the damn hell, you know, electrical cords that you connect up to a phone via your car, and voila, you got a fire. I mean, how are we even allowed to sell this stuff? How's it getting in?
Well, you know, as you said, Leon, we've got Australian standards, but, you know, they're not. There's no enforcement of the Australian standards.
Why?
Because one department refers you on to the next department. They refer you back to the other department. Look, I'll give you an example. Now, in Adelaide there, you've got a company called Molnar Hoists, okay?
Yep.
Fantastic quality, and I might add, I bought one of their hoists under my Australian Manufacturing and Farming program and donated it to a school in Victoria. The service was A1, Leon, A1, magnificent, and delivered to the door, a quality product, never have to look at it again.
Yep.
But at home here in Ballarat, I've had two instances that I know of Chinese hoists coming into the country, and I know of one chap who bought one of these hoists because he wanted it at home. Now, when the hoist wire gave way and the one corner of the hoist dropped and his car was in the hoist, and the only thing that stopped it dropping over the side was it hit up against one of the posts.
Yeah.
Now, because it was in his home workshop, they don't want to know about it. Work safe. Had it been in his factory with his men, he would, you know, he'd be crucified for putting his men at risk.
Yes, but when you buy something, I keep making this point, and I don't understand which boneheaded people in decision-making areas don't understand this. But when you go and buy something, you assume it's okay.
You assume it meets Australian standards.
Correct.
Because it's being sold on our market. And I say to people, don't assume anything. You know, have a very close look at what you're buying. And the other thing is you pay for what you get. If you buy a Molnar hoist from Adelaide or you buy a pair of Rossi boots, you're actually buying quality. You're buying a product which, you know, the companies comply with Australian standards. They pay work cover, they pay superannuation, they don't consume people to make a product. They contribute to the social, the economic and the environmental fabric of our nation.
John, what needs to happen to fix this up?
Well, look, you know, one thing that Nick Xenophon and I have done is Nick co-sponsored a bill that we've got in the Parliament called the Fair Trade Australian Standards Bill. This bill, Leon, is about saying the product that comes to Australia basically must comply with Australian standards. So not come here and then be fixed up before it lands on our shores.
Now, why wouldn't that get total and absolute support from both sides?
Because,
why wouldn't it?
Well, because, Leon, you know, the major parties are obsessed with so-called free trade. You know,
well, that's fine.
But all Nick and I are asking for is fair trade. And if all this propaganda they go on about a level playing field, well, let me tell you, Leon, and I know a lot of your listeners know, there is no level playing field.
What can people do? You see, even the labelling. See, now I went to an electrical store a while ago to buy a washing machine.
Yep.
And I said, I want something that's reliable. And he said to me, then you won't be buying anything made in China. Let me show you two brands.
Yep.
And he said Fisher and Paykel and Bosch. I said, this other stuff you can buy, it will be a bit cheaper, but guess what? I wouldn't guarantee that it's going to last you long.
That's right.
Okay, now, at least the sales attendant was honest enough to say that. So why are we all running off to China to make stuff when we know that what comes from that country 9 times out of 10 is sus?
Well, the whole thing is, Len, if people expect to get something decent for nothing, well, they're kidding themselves.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we had the Westinghouse brand, which, I've got a Westinghouse fridge I bought 21 years ago when I first got married. It's still at home. It's still going.
Yeah.
And I've just ordered a new Westinghouse fridge this week for home, and it's one of the last ones made in Australia now, and that plant is closing.
All right. So you're calling on the government to legislate that they should enforce the Australian standard?
Well,
if we have one, why don't we enforce it? Otherwise, don't have one. Don't have one. If you're not going to enforce it, don't have it.
Well, Liam, I don't have to tell you, it's bloody ridiculous when we have Australian companies manufacturing product on our shores that comply with the Australian standard. If they produce some of the crap that we see around the nation, they'd be crucified.
Yeah.
They'd be.
Yeah.
If they don't pay their work cover, they don't pay their super, if they don't, tag their leads, they're pursued mercilessly. But we've got this rubbish, these warehouses of crap advertising on the TV and on the radio and in the newsprint who just sell inferior products that are driving our country and our people into the ground. And I'll say it again, when you buy rubbish, you make yourself poor.
John Madigan, thank you.